lately, this house will allow criminals to wipe their memories instead of going to prison. On the side of government, we have the virgins. On the side of opposition, we have RGC.
RGC.
That's
Not writing
right.
properly, yeah.
You can't spell right without RGC.
Yeah.
Please make sure you keep your phone on silent, and please make sure that you keep your cheering and moving in and out the auditorium to a minimum. Let's now invite the Prime Minister, Wong Hui-Min, to begin the debate. Here.
Well, good morning, Madam Speaker. We see that in today's world, the prison sentence is often given to those who will commit particularly serious crimes like robbery, drinking, to a certain extent manslaughter. And Madam Speaker, we see that in this idea of just going to prison, it doesn't really help the major stakeholders, which we are talking about today, the citizens and also the criminals themselves. Madam Speaker, we believe that, yes, to a certain extent, the prison system of punishing the criminals, of protecting the people, does work to a certain extent only, but we'd like to further improve this system by actually implementing this memory wipe idea, this blancoing out your mind idea. Okay, Madam Speaker, first of all, let's get the definitions right. By allowing them, we're not making it mandatory for the criminals, but we're merely giving them this alternative. Secondly, Madam Speaker, to wipe the memories, we are actually going to wipe the memories that we feel induce this criminal behavior in them in the first place. And Madam Speaker, finally, instead of going to prison, obviously we're talking about crimes that warrant going to prison in the first place. Okay? And the way we're going to do this, we're not just going to wipe out the memory and leave them standing out on the street just like that. We are going to actually have this very interesting thing called the CPR, called Criminal Protection and Rehabilitation Program. Okay? The idea is, what we're trying to push for is that when criminals come back out into society, eventually when they do come out one day, we don't want them to be secluded, discriminated part of society, because we feel that it is bad for both the criminal and the society itself. Madam Speaker, will help them with actually finding work, will help them with instilling new values into them when we talk about rehabilitation. And Madam Speaker, the most important thing is that after they have this memory wipe, we are actually giving them a new life, in essence, anonymity, that hate crimes will not occur against them, and in a sense, it is retribution. But no, sir. So, Madam Speaker, onto our idea, first of all, of my first point, which is how essentially it is a much better rehabilitation, form of rehabilitation. Yes.
On a very principled level, why should we let criminals choose their punishment at all, ever?
Well, sir, let me finish with my point. And maybe you see that even though, yes, we agree that criminals have given up certain rights because they impinge on the victims' right in the first place. But we see that when you actually implement a system like the prison system in the first place, it does not help and it can actually further harm the society. Madam Speaker, we believe that there's a fallacy in the system and we need to address that. So back onto this idea of rehabilitation. When you go into prison, it's not a nice place to be. It reeks, stinks. You're going in there, they're hardened criminals. They're criminals who might be there for life. Madam Speaker, they will be bullied. They will be victimized criminals. And even though they say this is a form of punishment, it is not. Madam Speaker, what induces someone to do a crime that is so bad, that is so serious in the first place? Think of the anger in them, the angst. Some of them do it out of terror, out of paranoia. Madam Speaker, all these things build up to actually put a case. You don't be a criminal in one day. You don't be a robber in one day. You don't be a rapist in one day. Madam Speaker, that is not what happens. It is a build-up of events. It is all those emotions within you. And Madam Speaker, we say, that when you throw them into prison, it doesn't exactly help them balance out those feelings with an actual sense of rationality. Instead, it further reinforces this idea. And then speaker, we say that when they come out one day into society, they won't be like us. They won't have the moral values that we already have. They won't think like us. Instead, they will feel even more vengeful. They'll feel even more angry when they come back out into the society. And then speaker, this is the greatest problem not only to the criminals themselves, but also to the society. Why? Because, because when you have such angry criminals coming out, what are they going to do to the society? Do you think they would be happy if they were a rapist before, if they were essentially just doing crimes before, and they feel anger at that? Madam Speaker, do you think that these people will actually come back out and want to do it? What incentive is that for them? Madam Speaker, we believe that when we actually give them this idea of wiping out their memories, we give them this alternative in the first place, the people will be more protected. Because now instead of releasing a criminal who remembers the passion for crime that he has, he's now clean. He's a clean slate. He comes up with a blank memory, and essentially he will start all over. Yes, sir.
Miss, will these people be, under your CPR, will these people be re-entering the same family and co-workers and surroundings that they originally came from?
Well, I suppose under the Witness Protection Program, which we are trying to base our mechanism on, it will apply to the same conditions. And then people will be doing it to protect the criminals also. Because we talked about how it will actually protect the society in the first place. That now that you're releasing a criminal that is actually really, that will actually start all over again, that does not remember why he did the crime in the first place, that does not remember the conditions that forced him to do the crimes in the first place. And secondly, Madam Speaker, also protection to the criminal himself, because we see one idea is that even though some criminals come out of prison and they actually, let's say for some reason they do repent in prison after those years of solitude, even if that happens and the anger is not instilled in them, will the society give them this chance? And Madam Speaker, we say that when a person actually always remembers what he's done, maybe he'll be more guilty, but furthermore, the society will not forgive him. And that is why we're trying to promote this idea today, that after a memory wipe, we actually really help reinstate them back into their society. Madam Speaker, we're very proud to close today because we believe that the major stakeholders are essentially benefited by our policy. To the people themselves and also to the criminals who actually come back out into society one day. So with this, the rest of
Thank you very much. Let's now invite the leader of opposition to continue the debate. Here.
Madam Speaker, by allowing criminals to choose their punishment, government bench undermines the demands of justice. Now, the Prime Minister made a pretty gross strategic error. I really hope the Deputy Prime Minister deals with this. Their burden in today's debate is to answer a very fundamental question about why criminals should be able to choose their punishments ever, at all, no matter what the punishment is. In addition to that burden, they have to prove why this choice in particular is beneficial. They failed on both their burdens. They have to meet those in order to even compete in today's debate. I'm going to bring you two substantive arguments. First, why criminals should never be able to choose their punishment. And second, why this policy in particular undermines the goals of the criminal justice system. Before that, I have 5 points of rebuttal. First point of rebuttal. On their model, it's really unclear whether these people are going to be quintessentially the same person or whether they're going to be completely new individuals. Like, this is a really important question in the debate. If you are completely rewiring the neurological scaffolding that undermines this person's personality, then you're profoundly changing them and they're never going to be able to re-enter society in any meaningful way. Moreover, if they're modeling this after witness protection is seen as a reward in the status quo. So society, by and large, is going to see these individuals as rewarding criminals for their behavior. That's problematic. Second point of rebuttal. They're wiping memories to induce behavior. Memories don't induce behavior. Most crimes are crimes of passion. You come home, you see your wife sleeping with another man, you pull out a gun and you shoot her. Like, no memory you had induced you to do that. Your passions and your rational capacity were overwhelmed your ability to think clearly and you committed that crime. They don't fix actually what causes crimes because most crimes are crimes of passion. But even if you're talking about an individual who premeditated this, you're not actually like again, unless you're like completely changing the way this person is, you're not changing the fundamental rational like framework they use to make decisions to commit crimes in the first place. Third point of rebuttal. Prison isn't fun. Yeah, we agree. Prison kind of sucks. 2 responses. This is an argument to improve the prison system and provide like better services and not be cruel and unusual. This isn't an argument for giving prisoners a right to choose what their punishments ought to be. Second point of rebuttal. Prisons actually should not be posh places. Like unless you're going to prison in like Scandinavia, prisons aren't actually that great. We happen to think that the Scandinavian prison system is not super awesome because it gives them a pretty cush place to live. We think that's problematic. Fourth point of rebuttal, that recidivism is driven by anger and people feel resentment. Well, again, this is an argument for using cognitive behavioral therapy, providing therapy tools in prisons more often, abolishing solitary confinement. We on opposition bench are fine with reforming prisons so they aren't cruel and unusual and don't incentivize further crime. Like, obviously, nobody in today's debate wants criminals to keep committing crimes, so if there are other alternatives you can use within the existing prison system to disincentivize crime, we're fine with that. Fifth point of rebuttal, that they just kind of assert that criminals have an unmitigated right to start over. That's not true. The entire reason that people serve different lengths of prison sentences for different crimes is because some crimes demand a greater degree of punishment. If they just give these criminals an unmitigated right to start over, you're undermining the goals of justice. I'll get to that more in my second point. On to this first point, which definitely demands a response from government bench at some point, why criminals should never choose their punishment at all to begin with. Firstly, we'd say that breaking the law is violating a social contract. When you infringe on the rights of other members of society, you're making a conscious decision to remove yourself from the rules and regulations that govern everyone. Like, civilians exist within a reciprocal bargain with the government, wherein you do things like pay taxes and follow the law, and in exchange, the government does things like protect you and provide you with services. But when you negate on your end of the bargain, then the government takes away certain rights from you. That is an extremely important part of the criminal justice system, because punitive justice only works when society believes that punishment is sufficient. Unless society buys into this, nobody is ever going to accept the criminal justice system is working. What's going to happen when the victim of a rapist sees an individual who says, yeah, that rape was pretty traumatic for me too, let me just wipe my memory and forget about it, go into witness protection and then go back to my old job? That completely undermines any of the goals of the criminal justice system, and it's massively problematic. Society won't see this punishment as legitimate when criminals are free to pursue their rights. Like, it manifests itself in a number of ways. We don't allow people to choose where they go to prison. We don't allow people to choose who their guards are. Religious considerations aside, we don't let people choose their meals. Like, if a prisoner's like, ooh, I want a candy cane, we don't just say like, that, sure, like, why not? You get a candy cane. We don't give criminals cable subscription. Like, there's all sorts of things that we don't do for criminals. Like, they can't just take some auxiliary cable and plug it into a wall and all of a sudden access to satellite TV. Like, there's a reason we take these rights away. On the second point about how they undermine the goals of the criminal justice system, I'm going to look at this on 4 levels. The first level is rehabilitation. Cognitive behavioral therapy and other rehab techniques only work when criminals or patients confront the actions they committed and understand the consequences of those actions. Like, therapy is contingent upon revisiting something bad that you did and then engaging in therapeutic techniques to change behavior. The cognitive behavioral therapy works when you do what's called situational reliving, where you relive it something that happened to you, but then you train your brain to behave differently. So if there's somebody who, say, has an anger management problem and they assault people because of their anger management problem, cognitive behavioral therapy only works if the therapist can resurrect the memory of that individual experiencing anger and then committing that assault. That's the only place you actually do that. They don't get any of that on their side of the house because they just wipe the memory of this person ever getting angry and committing the assault to begin with. You've got 20 seconds to offer a POI if you've got one. Okay, moving on to, another reason rehabilitation won't work. Like, prison is a controlled environment that has a very rigid schedule. So successful therapy is contingent upon following this rigid schedule and making sure that you can control the prisoner's environment. The second level I want to look at under my second point is it undermines the goal of punitive justice. Again, losing one's autonomy is an essential demand of justice. The freedom to roam and having no restriction, it undermines that goal. So the third level is it closure for the victims. Victims demand justice when it's imposed by society. I've already told you that the punishment won't ever be seen as legitimate, but let's look at this even further. How would the victim of a murderer, or the victim's family, excuse me, or the victim of a rapist feel when they know that somebody has simply entered this other version of witness protection? What it's going to do is it's going to do 2 things. First of all, it's going to let that person know that society's not watching out for them. But second, it's going to impose a profound amount of fear in these individuals. Like, one of the most profound fears that a rape victim has is that they're going to be raped again. You produce a profoundly powerful visceral reaction in the victim when that victim knows that that person could be walking around and could have the same neurological wiring that allowed them to commit rape in the first place. Fourth level, the protection of society. Again, unless they're completely rewiring the neurological scaffolding of these individuals, we see prison as an important component of removing dangerous and violent people from society. We think that prison isn't just punitive, it's for the protection of everybody. So unless they can prove to you in today's debate that prisoners can choose their punishment and they can prove to you that this is a good choice to be made, we're opposition wins.
Thank you very much. The Sunway, the Deputy Prime Minister, continue the debate. Here.
Very good morning, Ms. Speaker. Before I start, I have 4 rebuttals. The first, about changing of the personality of a criminal after being wiped. Now, we stated specifically that we are not wiping memories completely from their childhood to the point where they will become babies mentally. We are looking at memories that trigger criminality, not determine personality. There could be an occasion, say for example, the rape of the criminal's sister by their father when they were young, and we erase that memory so that such triggers will not occur later in life. And second, about the reforming of prisons. Can you assume that simply bringing forth a new idea and trying to get the whole criminal system to change simply for the reforming of prisons would work? People have been trying to make prisons a better place since the Middle Ages and see where this has got them. And also another one about punishment and rehabilitation. In prison, you have higher amounts of punishment, but this comes at a cost. You have a lower rehabilitation process, low chance of rehabilitation. How many criminals that come out of jail actually manage to rehabilitate themselves and get back into the community? Our method, in which by wiping memories that trigger the actual criminality itself, would not only help them wipe clean the slate and begin again, but it will help them integrate back into the society. More on that later in my points. Third one is about protection. It is a common assumption denied. So it is a common assumption that criminals are born criminals. True, there may be some with XXY genes or who have been predispositioned to actually be criminals, but the actual number is exceedingly little, and we must know that most criminals become criminals simply because they are affected by their childhood. They are affected by decisions as well as experiences from their childhood, and there's no doubt about that. I shall tell you a few statistics later on in my points. Now, the fourth rebuttal, team opposition said that the victims will not have closure. Well, my dear opponents, by using CPR, it is basically not exactly you understand. It is a variation of the witness protection program where the new criminals will not be integrated back into the same family, the same society, but rather into a new place, and they'll become a new person, not personality-wise, but memory-wise as well as criminality-wise. In other words, they will have no criminality. And now on to my points. Let me first reaffirm my team's case that we would allow denied criminals to wipe their memories that triggered their criminality instead of wallowing in prison. I'm going to be talking about the factors that cause criminality, as well as how humanity is a major factor when it comes to choosing memory wipes over prisons. Yes, sir.
It's a very well-known fact that memories can be reused. What happened under your paradigm if they regain their memory? It's a very well-known fact that memories can be reused. What happens if they regain memory?
Remember, sir, that we are not simply rehabilitating them and throwing them in some country, some little town in Cuba or something. We will have scouts, we will have monitors onto their progress to make sure it is basically a witness protection program with a twist. So we will make sure that the criminal goes back to the not the original, to turn into a, can I said, will become a new person with a completely new look at life. Now, back to the factors that cause criminality. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a well-known fact that poor family backgrounds will result in a much higher propensity in crime. Did you know, ladies and gentlemen, that people are 50 to 60% more likely to become criminals if they grow up in a family with a single parent? Did you know that if they grow up in a neighborhood with a high crime rate, they are over 80% more likely to become criminals? And that a criminal is nearly 3 times more likely to become a criminal if he grows up in a family that contains a criminal in a neighborhood that has high crime rates. Now, basically, he is influenced by the crimes going on around him. You all know that children, sometimes even adults, learn by watching. They learn by being influenced by the actions of others. And if they see these actions, for example, your father beating up your mother, this sort of thing will not only cause them to feel the angst, the hurt, it will cause them to become criminals in future. So by wiping his or her memories clean, we are giving him a clean slate. Yes.
Okay, first I already told you that you can't get CBT on your side of the house, because now they can't relive the memory. You still haven't answered the fundamental question of why criminals should ever be allowed to choose their crimes punishments to begin with.
My third speaker will elaborate on that and show you why criminals are humans too and how they have a choice. Yeah, so anyway, we are giving him a clean slate, tabula rasa, to put it in Latin. And in other words, we're giving him another chance. Do you guys know who Ted Kaczynski is? He's known as the Unabomber. He grew up in a poor background. He had a single mom. His father shot himself in the head, and he witnessed this. What the Unabomber did, Ted Kaczynski did, was that he used letter bombs and sent them to various corporations, which blew up, and basically, yeah, he was some sort of a terrorist. Now, would Kaczynski become what he had become if he had not been influenced by the criminality of his father, influenced by the criminality of his father and so on? Now, on to humanity. Gandhi once said, humanity is like an ocean. If one drop of water is dirty, the ocean does not become dirty. Why do we see criminals as criminals, ladies and gentlemen? Is it because of what they've done? Or is it because of who they are? Obviously because of what they've done. And CPR, given there is a variation of the witness protection program, can help wipe the slate clean and make criminals not seen as criminals, but rather people who are starting again. And therefore, we believe, without a doubt, that this program, the CPR, will help benefit both criminals as well as the society when it comes to a lower crime rate, as well as the rehabilitation, specifically rehabilitation of the criminals themselves. And with that, I rest my case. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's now invite the Deputy Leader of Opposition to continue the debate.
You see that? I just said that. God. Okay. Madam Speaker, does upbringing or your surroundings really determine criminality, right? And that's a fundamental kind of argumentation that came from the speaker before me. He would like you to believe that simply because you come from, a poor socioeconomic background, that you are likely to be a criminal, that you are likely to injure other people. There's a reason why we don't necessarily believe in that, right? We believe that there are many others from that same background who live without committing crimes. People make choices sometimes, and we don't think, we think those choices come about through many ways, right? Through memories or whatever, right? We think in the end, we think that it's a poor excuse for you to say that we'll erase all those memories relating to those surroundings, right? We think that that's a damaging stereotype that harms people who come from, ghetto neighborhoods and being able to be seen as real individuals. Secondly, we think that this idea that he has that people are abused and therefore they commit crimes. We think that there are some people who have this thing called antisocial personality disorder, right? And they will commit crimes, or they're more likely to commit crimes whether or not they've actually been abused, right? So, as to sum it up, really, psychopaths will be psychopaths because the neural pathways that exist in their minds that makes them more like, makes them likely to commit crimes. Those are my two rebuttals, really. I have two substantives to talk to you about. One is what really changes in that. Like, what is, and this will answer the point that was brought up very early on from Prime Minister. What is an incentive for ex-convicts to change their behavior? And I'll talk to you about like visceral reaction that criminals will, ex-cons will have, not only to the crime, but the remorse and guilt they feel for committing that crime, but also to prison and why that's really very necessary. Secondly, I'll talk to you about the kind of abuse that was likely to happen, because he never quite, the speaker before me didn't respond to a lot of things. Firstly, he didn't respond to Brett's obvious question. Obviously, Whip will try to deal with that, like the idea that whether or not prisoners will have choice of punishment. We think that's crucial in this debate, because side government has to show why these prisoners should have the right to be able, should be given or allowed the right to choose their punishment, even though they've committed something that's obviously breached the social contract. Secondly, they didn't deal with Brett's characterization that witness protection is seen within society as a reward, and therefore there's little perception of the idea that this is a punishment towards crime. Thirdly, Brett also said that memories. If you're going to remove memories that are being used, it doesn't remove or prevent the vast majority of crimes where people usually commit on the side of passion, right? When they do it on spur of the moment. But even if it were premeditated, the fact that they're going to allow other memories to exist means that they're still likely to commit a crime. Because as a Middle Asian, memory is a very complicated thing. It's very complex. Many memories induce many different kinds of behavior, like even how you were brought up necessarily. Lastly, the last part that Brett talked about, I don't think they really dealt with, was this idea that in order for people to be able to deal with their trauma, even if we were to accept the idea that these people accept trauma, people need to go through situational reliving. Like, therapy is an important part of these people being able to deal with this traumatic memories. That's why therapists are much powerful, trying to bring up suppressed memories in order to allow these people to finally face and deal with those fears that they have faced. Lastly, is Brett's idea that the point of punishment is actually to isolate society from those criminals during the prison sentence. Why that's very crucial. Before I move on to my substantives, are there any points of information? Right. What changes a man? We think that what changes a man is basically twofold. Firstly, is this idea of theory. Like, there's a lot of things you learn, like book learning, right? That's what education is for. That's what going to school is for, right? Or the converse of that is through experience, harsh lessons where you learn that there are real consequences behind your action. The problem with theory, right, is that most of the time you cannot see the real, like the consequences it has on real individuals and how they suffer for your crimes. That's why, for example, McNamara, an advisor to JFK, was so complicit in the bombings of Vietnam. I mean, the war crimes that happened against Vietnam, because he couldn't see exactly the kind of people who were suffering under those bombings. You couldn't see the effects of Agent Orange upon those people, right? That's the kind of problem that happens when you have theory learning. We think that that's why, for example, it's very important for us to inculcate the importance of experience in terms of harsh lessons and real consequences. People should feel guilt and remorse for the harsh consequences. They should have a visceral reaction to crime and passion. What's the comparison here? For normal, average individuals like you and me who haven't committed a crime, most of us will have never considered the kind of guilt and remorse that a criminal will have faced for committing a crime in the first place. For most of us, committing a crime or actually going to prison is a theoretical experience, never one to be experienced for one ourselves. The difference here, and this is a response to the Prime Minister, is that what is the incentive for the ex-cons to change is the very experience that they face in going to prison, in having committed the crime in the first place. That's incentive for them to change. And it's far stronger, actually, as incentive for them to change, right? We think that furthermore, even if you believe that family, co-workers, your surroundings, your upbringing create a tendency to commit crimes, right? We think that we need to err on the side of caution, and that like erecting a mental barrier of guilt prevents reoccurrence, right? And we think that's absolutely crucial in terms of us being able to at least know that. So what we'd like to say actually is that the people who are less likely to recommit crimes are people who have actually committed them because they know exactly how horrible prison is, how horrible it is to feel those same remorse. It's not as easy as operating an easy bake oven. Let's move on to the second point here, which is the abuse that necessarily happens, right? We think that if, for example, you will agree that witness protection program is a reward, because it is, ladies and gentlemen, you start with a new identity, you get to be free of your previous shackles of whatever it was, your family, your surroundings, then necessarily we would posit that people who live in those very surroundings would see this as an opportunity to get out of those surroundings, out of that very situation, right? So people, if we agree with their characterization that people who come from poor socioeconomic backgrounds like ghettos, for example, are more likely to commit crimes, then there's absolutely no disincentive for them to commit crimes, so that they have the opportunity to wipe their memories, to be offered a new chance to start over in a new place where they're more likely to reintegrate in the society. We think that's absolutely harmful when you create incentives for criminals to commit crimes. That's why so we think that in general what they're living in is a land of candy and unicorns, where they would like to believe that the people that they're changing will change them, one. But secondly is that being absolutely free or being innocent is a far better situation, that's what they would have you believe, right? Is a far better situation than having had to live with the guilt and the fear of returning to prison. We're proud to, of course.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. We now invite the Whip Speaker of the government to continue the debate. Here,
If I take one cell from my cheek and trade it with one cell of your cheek, and I continually do this again and again, when do I stop being me? And when do you start me? Very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I'll straight going into the rebuttals from the first speaker. Technically, what the first speaker was trying to say is that our paradigm will not work because of A, fear of the society, and B, that criminals cannot choose their sentences. Now let me address why we are allowing them to choose their sentences. Now, imagine I'm a criminal, and I get sentenced to either A, prison in life, or B, being wiped of my memory and being reintroduced into society. If I pick prison for life, I will not re-enter society. I will cease to exist in society. If I pick to wipe my memory, ladies and gentlemen, I stop being me. My personality is not mine anymore. So when I re-enter society, I am not the criminal that chose to re-enter society.
Which is it? Your personality doesn't change because you're only removing certain memories, or your personality profoundly changes. You can't have both.
Now, what is personality, ladies and gentlemen? Personality is extremely subjective and also depends on the memories we have. I take out one memory, your personality changes. Personality is memory, is experience, ladies and gentlemen. So when personality is changed, that's when you're a different person. So when you are reintroduced into society, you are not the person before. You are a new person. And thus, by technical definition, the old person does not re-enter society, ladies and gentlemen. So it does not matter whether the criminal has the right to choose or not. Even if he does choose either one, the outcome is the same, ladies and gentlemen. And also, I'd like to address how the first speaker talked about society will be fearful of the criminal. Ladies and gentlemen, as I've said previously, when this personality changes, he is not himself. He is another person entirely. Because personality is what makes us, us, ladies and gentlemen. So if a criminal is reintroduced into society with a different personality, he is no longer a criminal. He is a different person, and by technical definition, the criminal is not in society. So, his case falls. Ladies and gentlemen, as the second speaker stated, that the status quo is a lot better in producing people, in making these criminals change as an incentive. Prison will make them change. Now, ladies and gentlemen, may change. What we as the government are trying to propose is that a straight, simple solution to make not only these criminals change, no, we are technically removing these criminals from society and reintroducing a working new member of society capable of giving back instead of may change. Yes.
What gives the prisoner the right to choose his punishment? He will definitely choose the one that harms him the least.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, if he chooses prison for life, he does not re-enter society. If he chooses to wipe his memory, the prisoner, will not enter society. There is no choice here, ladies and gentlemen. It's technically choosing, do I want to use a Volvo to crash into a tree or Mercedes to crash into the tree? I still crash into the tree. It does not matter what I choose. In the end, the results will be the same. So technically, there is no choice. Now, coming back to my rebuttal, the incentive, ladies and gentlemen. As I said previously, when we wipe certain memories, our personality changes. And they were also talking about how situational reliving, how they will learn to live with the situation. Now, ladies and gentlemen, is it not better to remove the situation altogether, to make them a new person? We have to understand that when we wipe someone's memory, we are not making them themselves. We are changing them to another person, ladies and gentlemen. And because of this, it is almost equal to the death penalty. Except we have a new working member of society that can re-enter and have contribution, ladies. Now, they were also talking about how one of the POIs given by the opposition team was that, what if these memories come back? Now, I don't really see the point in why asking this, because the motion states assuming feasibility. We're not here to decide whether the memories can come back or not. We are assuming that this is a 100% working way to remove memories and they will not come back. So, point false. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to remember what makes us human, our personalities. Now, nature versus nurture. These two play a vital role in making us who we are. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are not trying to destroy the neurological scaffolding that makes us who we are. We can't do that. But what we can do is make sure that your nurturing, your memories, your experiences that make up who you are change. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to say for one last time that we, as the government, would allow criminals to wipe their memories instead of going to prison simply because wiping their memories will not only serve the exact same purpose as the status quo, but under our paradigm, we will create new working members of the society to be re-entered and contribute. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just invite the last speaker of the opposition. With here.
Gandhi also once said, always make sure you have an antivirus installed in your computer. I have two questions to this debate. Firstly, the criminal justice system, and I'll tackle this under three questions. Firstly, is prison really that bad? Is this going to make better convicts? Thirdly, I'm going to talk about the victim's perspective. My second question is going to be about memories. I'll tackle that at a few levels. I'll talk to you about memories in general, and I'll talk to you about change. But before that, just a few problems I had with government whip speech, right? Firstly, and this is the major thing, right? We continually push this question around opposition bench. Why do we let them choose? Why do we suddenly give them this opportunity and put their lives in their hands, which firstly, as Brett stated, undermines the justice system in totality. But moreover, why would you ever give someone that's already committed a crime, that has breached that social contract, the ability to pick the less harmful option? The idea they pushed was this: when you change their memory or when you take away a particular memory, you change a person in totality. Firstly, that's false, because if you look at a general trend analysis of how people forget things all the time. People don't remember things all the time. People with Alzheimer's are still themselves, just don't remember particular things. So firstly, the idea of using a particular memory isn't going to change much of a person. But more importantly, if you look at personalities, a personality is going to change immediately because a particular memory is gone. But they're talking about this thing called antisocial personality disorder, where psychopaths are still psychopaths, regardless of whether they have those memories or not. People who have anger management don't need, or even if they lose all that memory, don't need those memories to become angry again, but just need to feel angry. It's inducing that feeling again, which is where my question on memories was really important. Because what happens when they do, or if they regain memory? Not answered sufficiently, because he said, oh, it's impossible to regain those memories because we're going to wipe it in totality. False. There are things that induce memories, regardless whether it's feeling, regardless of whether it's experiencing something, or whether you see someone that looks familiar to you. Especially because under their paradigm, the problem is they said, oh, we're only going to take, and this is quoting Prime Minister verbatim, we're only going to remove the memories that induce this crime. That's problematic already, right? Because if you just want to take away those specific memories, that person is still that person, regardless of whether you move a memory or two memories, which then makes their case sort of, iffy. So my first question, the criminal justice system, is prison really that bad? We say yes, but prison has evolved over time. We've gone from thumbnails to posh Scandinavian prisons. But more importantly, we admit that going to prison isn't going to be like a Malibu Barbie beach house, right? It's going to be horrible. You are going to be bullied. You are going to be victimized. But here's the thing. Prison is that bad because prison is generally accepted as a deterrent. We want it to be that bad. We don't want you to go to prison. We want you to be afraid of prison. We want these criminals to retain their memory, because when they go to prison, they're going to come out thinking, I do not want to go back into that prison in the first place. Which then boils down to this first question. Is it more important, or is it better to have those memories as a rehabilitation, or to remove those memories and then protect these criminals? Because that's essentially what they're doing. We say protecting these criminals and removing their memories isn't going to facilitate rehab as well as retaining those memories, sending you to prison and pushing you back out into society where you can reintegrate. You are helped to reintegrate. Prisoners that leave prisons who don't have anywhere to go to, the government does help you get a job. The government does help you get somewhere to stay so that you can reintegrate back into society. A lot of the measures that they talk about is already taken care under status quo, right? So prison is bad, but prison is only that bad because we want it to be a deterrent. We don't see why prisons being bad can't exist. Under their paradigm, the prison is so horrible, we don't want anyone to go there. Prison can't exist at all because they're principally against the idea of prisons existing in the first place, because they feel like it's bad. We don't want people to go there, they're going to get bullied and stuff, right? So that's inherently troubling, right? Secondly, is this going to make better convicts? So they are trying to tell you this. People are angry when they get out of prison. People are vengeful when they get out of prison. They're angry against the state. Firstly, your experience in prison is completely subjective. It is rigid, but it is not totally objective as to what happens when you go into prison. Yes, we try to discipline you. We try to help you reintegrate into the societies. But the first basic principle of prison is rehabilitation. And what happens in prison is up to your choice. If you want to join a gang and do whatever and deal drugs in prison, that is your choice. But if you want to follow the system rigidly and go for courses, you can even get a degree while you're in prison and come back into society a better person than you were in the first place. I'll take you in a minute. That is up to you. So we admit that no, you don't make better convicts under their system because you're inherently protecting them, right? There are plenty of rapists and murderers who have gone out of prison and have come out better people, have reintegrated perfectly back into society. Because the issue here is this. When you wipe specific memories and then protect them under this criminal protection program, firstly, it's an uncontrollable environment you're placing them in. that's inherently bad, right? Because when you place them in an environment that's uncontrollable, you can't dictate as to the experiences and feelings that they feel when they're there. The system isn't rigid, it's completely subjective, and that's problematic because that hinders rehabilitation. Secondly, memories don't essentially make a person, especially when it's taken away at such a minuscule scale. Thirdly, letting them re-enter society at will, for what? Like I said, we're not going to change the neurological wiring, we're just going to remove that specific memories. So essentially, they're the exact same person without a specific memory. What's the harm here? We don't really see where they want to come in government. Before I move on, yes.
So given the circumstances and the environment there, and can you really rehabilitate him? Can you really get him? But secondly, sir, eventually when they are released out into society, will they still be the same? Will you feel safer with a criminal that has wiped his memory?
I would be safer with the criminal that has gone to prison and is scared of going back into prison and chooses to be a better person than someone that chose to wipe his memory. A specific memory then gets removed, put him back in society, and he's actually the same person, because that's danger at all. There was never the deterring factor of him wanting to go to prison or not. But secondly, I'm going to finish answering the question. Yes, prison is bad. You can choose, and you can rehabilitate yourself if you choose to follow the guidelines and restrictions that are placed on you when you are in prison. Thirdly, the victim's perspective, and this is something that's very important. Given Brett's speech was not rebutted by that. You remove this idea of closure, right? Because that's essentially what the criminal justice system is there in the first place, to give closure and protection towards this prison. Like you said, the biggest fear of rape victims is that the rapist is going to come back and rape them. And you're just removing that one particular memory of them raping you. Ted Bundy is still going to be Ted Bundy, whether or not you erase all those memories of him being executing and murdering all those girls. He's still going to be a necrophiliac, he's still going to be a murderer, he's still going to be a sexual abuser. And that's problematic, right? Because then this whole religion doesn't exist in the first place. My second question, I'll do this very quickly. This idea of memories. Do they really induce crime? Because let's talk about the Unabomber, right? Because they say, oh, you know, he had a troubled childhood and stuff, and that's essentially what made him bad. We have to look in direct comparison. The Unabomber's brother is a monk, and the Unabomber's brother is the one that turned him in because he recognized his handwriting in the first place. So it's not really so much about the upbringing that you have, it's more about the person that you are. And regardless of whether you remove those specific memories, you are still going to be that person. Antisocial personalities don't exist. You cannot change people by removing specific memories. If you want a criminal justice system that's actually going to rehabilitate prisoners, you're definitely going with opposition.
Right. Thank you very much. That's right. The reply speaker of the opposition. Then the debate with the opposition. Here.
Okay, so before I explain why Op definitely wins, I'm going to explain why Gov definitely loses. They could never actually make up their mind about how this therapy functions. In the Prime Minister's speech, we get this idea that we're only making marginal changes to somebody. We're removing just very specific memories, and they maintain their personality integrity. But then by the time we get to the whip speech, we get this idea that these people are profoundly changed, and we've totally changed their personality. When they can't even make up their mind about how this therapy affects the people that are under, or how this memory wipe affects the people, there's no possible way that they can win, because they don't even know what they're talking about. It makes it difficult for us to rebut, because I'm rebutting a conception of people that are only changed a little bit, but then by the time we get to Dharma's speech, he has to now respond to some different conception of these people. Very bizarre. Okay, so why do we definitely win? Well, there were three big questions in the debate, and the first was, should criminals choose their punishment? No analysis at all in the first two speeches from government. This is a gross strategic error on this part. Because in this debate, before you can even answer the question of what punishment they're choosing, it's Gov's burden to demonstrate that prisoners have this right to begin with. The right was just asserted. And we finally get out of the whip this idea that, well, it's not really a choice because it's like crashing a BMW into a tree versus a Mercedes into a tree. But according to their Prime Minister, prison is this awful place. So according to the Prime Minister, it's like crashing a Mercedes into a tree, lighting it on fire, being buried in a shallow grave, and then have somebody pissing on it. That's the conception of prison that we get basically coming from the Prime Minister. So, as Megpat told you, they're going to choose the memory wipe every single time. They're never going to choose to go to prison. They're always going to choose the memory wipe. So it is definitely a choice, and that doesn't satisfy the demands of justice. The second big question in today's debate was, what causes crime? And they had a very shallow view of this. They said, it's these memories, right? And they only had one example, Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber. Okay, Ted Kaczynski was a crazy person that lived alone in a cabin in the woods in Montana, and his brother's a Buddhist monk, as Karma told you. Like, Mekteb told you in his speech that there are people who have bad experiences that don't commit crimes, and there are people that have bad experiences that do commit crimes. The difference is something in personality, right? Like, it's obviously not the memory, because if it was the memory, then Ted Kaczynski's brother would have never become a Buddhist monk and turned him in. He would have become like the Unabomber 2.0 or something. So we gave you kind of 3 different conceptions of what causes crime. The first was passion. We told you that many crimes are simply crimes of passion, no response from their side. We also told you that it's personality. Now, if we actually listen to what the Prime Minister said in her conception of individuals who are barely changed, you're not changing the personality that makes these people, increases their propensity to commit crimes in the first place. The third thing that causes crime is a lack of disincentives. Both Mekteb and Karma told you that if prison is this awful place they say it is, then there's a strong disincentive to go. If you know that I can rape a woman, and then I can just choose this memory wipe, and like, yeah, that might kind of suck, but hey, at least I get to rape somebody and never go to jail. Like, I would much rather live in a world where the rapist thinks, maybe I don't want to go to jail for 30 years. The third question that you have to answer in today's debate is which team satisfies the demands of justice. So government bench is really sympathetic to the criminals. They want to make a really better world for the criminals, but they're not really sympathetic to everybody else, none of the other stakeholders. We told you that in the name of public safety, you have to keep these people locked up. Because again, if we accept the Prime Minister's characterization and these people's personality is still maintained even after you wipe the memory, then a really angry sociopath is still a really angry sociopath wandering around. They have no sympathy for the people who might be future victims of these criminals. They have no sympathy for the people who've already been subject to these criminals. There's no closure for the victims. Op wins.
Thank you very much. Let's now invite the last speaker of the Octofinals. The best speaker of the Dome. Here.
Next speaker. What makes up an individual? What makes up you? Why are we so distinctly different from one another? If I had a twin sister, but she grew up in China or grew up in Malaysia, we would be distinctly different. It's your environment that changes. It's your memories, your experiences, and essentially the people you interact with and that we bring up what you've been through. And Madam Speaker, that is exactly what we're basing this on. We believe that memories do constitute an important part of the person. We believe that memories of the crime that you did, why you did it in the first place, is very important when you want to actually rehabilitate the person. But, Madam Speaker, just on 2 ideas today. First of all, we talk about this idea of rehabilitation and how prisons or jailing people, locking them up in the end, doesn't really rehabilitate them. Yes, they say that there have been improvements in the system, but why is it still as bad? They say that it is a deterrent for criminals. But in the end, does it really protect the society? And I'll go into that later again. Madam Speaker, they talk about how rehabilitation essentially is confronting your behavior. It is really guilt and remorse they feel. But, Madam Speaker, when we talk about that, how does that help that come out into the society and actually be a normal part of society? Aren't they just going to still be the same person? Because, Madam Speaker, what we're trying to do is that we're trying to help them find their footing back into society. And we may sound very sympathetic to the criminals alone. But what we're trying to do and what they grossly neglected to think about was what I brought up earlier in our speeches. This idea of actually protecting the citizens at the same time. And onto this idea of protection. There's this sort of balance between the feeling of safety they give someone or actually safety in essence. Let's bring up this idea of Ted Bundy, right? If I knew that Ted Bundy was walking out there, that one day he would eventually be released. Anyway, Madam Speaker, would I feel safer to know that he is a memory wipe? Or after 30 years of not raping anyone anymore, him coming out into the society? If he's eventually going to come out into society one day, Madam Speaker, I as a victim would feel safer to know that there has actually been something done to his memory one gets done. Madam Speaker, this essentially is what we're trying to say. We say that this system further improves the status quo. And we believe that for the people, for the criminals in some way, and it's actually for a better human kind. Thank you.
Alright, thank you very much. Debaters may cross the floor and head back to the meeting hall. We wait for the result. Thank you.